We all think we know Bill Gates, right? The founder of Microsoft, the tech titan. But what if the very idea of success that drove him to build an empire was something he eventually decided was, well, just wrong? Let's dive into his incredible journey and how he came to rethink everything. So this is the Bill Gates we all picture at the start. He actually called his own style hardcore. This wasn't about work-life balance because the work was his life. And that intense, single-minded focus, that was the engine that took Microsoft from this tiny startup to a global powerhouse. So how does a guy with that much success, that much conviction, just completely flip the script on what it all means? Well, it wasn't one big light bulb moment. It was actually a series of really powerful influences and quiet moments of reflection that totally reshaped his worldview. To really get the transformation, we have to start at the beginning. The early days at Microsoft. They weren't just about writing code. They were about this relentless, all-consuming drive to win, period. It is so hard to overstate how nuts this goal sounded back then. I mean, we were in an era of computers the size of a room. So the idea of a personal computer in every single home, it sounded like pure science fiction. People literally laughed at him. But for Gates, all that ridicule was just fuel for the fire. He saw the future and he was absolutely determined to be the one to build it. And this quote, this captures his strategy perfectly. It was never about quick wins for him. It was all about understanding the power of compounding progress, especially with computing power. While everybody else was focused on the next quarter, Gates was out there playing chess, thinking 10 years ahead. That philosophy became the absolute cornerstone of Microsoft's dominance. But here's the thing, he didn't develop this vision in a vacuum. There were a few key people in his life who really laid the groundwork for his eventual and pretty profound shift in thinking. His parents were this incredible 1-2 punch of influences. His mother, Mary, she had these incredibly high expectations. She was always pushing him to do more, to get out there socially, to be, as he put it, civilized. Then you had his father, Bill Sr., who was the complete opposite, this calm, thoughtful example of integrity and reason. So get this, during some dispute, a young, super combative Bill expected his dad, who was a lawyer, to just come in with guns blazing. But instead, after listening to the other side, his dad just calmly said, "I hear you." For Gates, this was a mind-blowing moment. He realized you could be strong and hold your ground without being aggressive. What a powerful lesson, right? As a teenager, Gates was apparently so difficult that his parents actually sent him to a therapist. And this therapist, Dr. Cressy, he reframes the whole thing by telling Bill, you're going to win, not because you're smarter, but because your parents are on your team. That simple shift just diffused the whole rivalry and taught him that family wasn't a competition, it was a partnership. Now, these lessons in navigating relationships, they were about to be put to the ultimate test when it came to his most famous rival, Steve Jobs. And their whole dynamic was way more complicated than the simple story of two enemies fighting for control. This is the story we all know, right? The one the media absolutely loved. You had Gates the engineer versus Jobs the visionary, Microsoft versus Apple. It was framed as one of the biggest, baddest business rivalries of all time. But just listen to what Gates himself says. That doesn't sound like a bitter rival, does it? No way. That's the sound of deep respect, maybe even a little envy. Gates knew that Jobs had this kind of artistic genius, this intuition that he really admired. Yeah, they were competitors, but they also shared this really unique bond of knowing what it takes to truly change the world. And this little job from Jobs, it just captures their dynamic perfectly. It's a burn, for sure, but there's this grudging respect baked into it. Jobs is acknowledging Microsoft's massive scale and success, even while he's claiming the high ground on design. It was a rivalry, but it was one built on the shared understanding of the game they were both playing. And that brings us to the biggest transformation of all. The moment when building the world's biggest company just wasn't the end goal anymore. The new goal, it became giving all those rewards away. Just take a second and really look at that number. It's an amount of money that's almost impossible to even wrap your head around. But for Gates, seeing that number wasn't like looking at a scoreboard that said, I won. For him, it became a moral question that demanded an answer. And the answer he landed on was this incredibly powerful conviction that hoarding wealth on that scale is just fundamentally wrong. He came to believe it's not a favor to your kids, and it's a massive missed opportunity for all of humanity. That one single idea, became the new mission for his entire life. So why this intense feeling about it? Well, it came from a few places. It was his mother's voice, always in his head, a core value she hammered into him. It was a deep belief that creating a dynasty of wealth actually hurts your children. And, it was the ultimate engineering challenge. Could he apply the same skills that built Microsoft to solving huge problems like malaria and polio? And of course, he was inspired by mentors like Warren Buffett. So after this whole incredible journey of rethinking success, what can the rest of us take away from it? Well, Gates has pretty much distilled his life's wisdom into a few core principles that are surprisingly simple but really powerful. First, find what you genuinely love. For him, it was computers, and that passion is what made those hardcore years feel like a gift, not a sacrifice. Second, don't be afraid to fail. He argues that even a big decision like dropping out of Harvard isn't the real risk. The real failure is never even trying. And third, and this one is huge, you have to carve out time for deep, quiet, reflective thinking. And he doesn't just talk about that third point, he lives it to an extreme. Twice a year, he completely unplugs for a think week. He goes off to a remote cabin, all by himself, with just a huge stack of books and papers. That's it. No calls, no news. He believes that it's in that quiet, slow reflection, far away from all the noise, that his best ideas are truly born. And beneath all the strategies, all the life lessons, he says there's one simple, universal truth that should guide everything we do: the golden rule. It's the foundation for his relationships, his business, and most importantly, his philanthropy. It's the simple idea that led him to his life's second, and maybe even greater, act. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating question for our future, doesn't it? Gates's journey was about a human being learning how to use his incredible fortune for the good of humanity. But as AI creates the next wave of unimaginable wealth, who's going to teach the machine the value of giving back, and what does that even look like?